And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network. Also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. You're a funny guy. Southeast Orthopedic Specialists is Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's, with the same piece of paper again, mind you.
The same piece of paper.
It never fails. The same piece of paper. About 5 or 6 years old right here. All right, he is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green. You are Florida Gator fans after 2 weeks off of victory, right, over Mississippi State. 1-1 in conference play. Back in the non-conference tomorrow against UCF, 7:45 on the SEC Network. Graham, we talk about fork in the road games, and I don't think this is a fork in the road game for the entire season, but it clearly is for the next week and a half, because they're going to get their doors blown off next week in Knoxville. I'm not breaking any news there. By the way, thank you to ESPN for picking that one up. 7 o'clock up in Knoxville in Neyland Stadium. That'll be fun. So that, to me, makes tomorrow against UCF even more important if you want 2024 to be anything for Gator football.
Yeah, I keep going back to... Actually, first of all, hold on. I'll answer your point in a second. Heck, we have to start this show with a congratulations to yourself. 100 pounds is big time, my man.
Yeah. Thank you.
A quick kind of sneak peek inside the building. Hack, as you all know, does Hacker After Dark, the late night show. It is a fantastic job. Because of the time of Hack's show, most people are not in the building by the time he gets in the building, right? Because most people get off 5, 6 o'clock, right?
I walk in, I'm a rock star on Friday mornings for Gator Bytes.
I, due to this podcast, have gotten to see you on a more regular basis, I think, than most people. So I've gotten to see the transformation as it's happened. That's awesome, dude. Congratulations. That's big time. 100 pounds is no joke, dude.
Well,
That's crazy.
Awaken 180 on February 20th was when I started. I was 317 pounds. I woke up on October 2nd. I was 217 pounds.
That's crazy.
And actually now I'm 215, so it's actually 102 total.
That's wild.
In 7.5 months.
That's wild. Yeah, they're not a direct Gator Byte sponsor, but they obviously sponsor with the station, and they do great work over there. So shout out Awaken 180. Shout out yourself, because it's not just Awaken 180. It's a two-way street. It takes two to tango.
A lot of mental.
You've done a great job. 100 pounds. You should be ridiculously proud of yourself. That's awesome. Back to the Gators. Yes, I keep going back to this offseason when we were doing podcasts to preview the year. And you made a point back then that was a correct one, which was that everyone's talking Miami. But that A&M game is going to be a big indictment if they lose.
And it was.
What happened?
And it was.
They lost, and it
was a
was,
huge
right?
indictment. Yep.
And I believe I'll have to roll the tape and see if I did say it on this podcast. I know I said it on Denmark and Marsh with Dylan Denmark, who we do our show together as well. I was also circling this game with UCF. You were absolutely right about A&M. I thought A&M and UCF were arguably both more important than Miami, because A&M, you can't lose to a coach in game 3 when you're in year 3 in the swamp and he got killed, right? So that's really bad indictment, number one. This game, with the exception of the transfer portal guys from UCF, basically every last guy that plays on that UCF roster is a guy that probably grew up a Florida or Florida State fan and would have gone to Florida had they received an offer to go play there.
Yes, I don't disagree with you. I think the fact that they're in the Big 12 now, that they're in one of the Power 4 conferences, has changed the image of UCF in the last 2 years. But yes, I agree. I mean, if you are from the state of Florida playing for UCF, odds are you grew up watching, maybe not Tebow, but right after Tebow.
And look, to something you just said, like UCF has graduated beyond this. They have elevated their program beyond this. So UCF is a team that can compete with big boys now. I totally understand that. Totally get that. Historically, this would have been a paycheck game for the Gators, right?
Right.
That said, and now even more so, you look at UCF has had 2 key players on both sides of the ball opt out, and they're not going to play the rest of the year. And you look at last week, I don't think Colorado is very good. And Colorado kind of did whatever they wanted against UCF.
Well, here's a couple of things about UCF. To me, the luster is completely off. Now, when they came back and they beat TCU, that was a huge win.
Yeah.
For UCF. They were 3-0. They were going into a bye week. And I think I even said it the last time we did Gator Bytes. It was quite an opportunity for UCF because you had a national TV game against Colorado in your house.
Big noon kickoff coming to Orlando.
Yeah, and then 7 days later, you come to Gainesville to take on the, quote, big brother in the state in Florida. And what a chance it was. Well, half of that chance was completely squandered. To me, the luster's off of UCF now. Colorado's got a very good quarterback, and they have very good skill position players. They are not good on the lines of scrimmage. Their O-line's not very good. Their D-line's not very good.
That's generous.
You did not know that last week as they pushed UCF around.
Correct.
On the line of scrimmage, which to me was eye-opening. Now, the question is, was UCF overconfident? Were they looking ahead to Florida, which I don't know why you would, or are they just not as good as we made them out to be? Because that was shocking to me, how Colorado bullied UCF on the line of scrimmage. And if Colorado can do that, I would argue on the lines of scrimmage, not skill position, but the lines of scrimmage, Florida is better than Colorado on the O-line and the D-line.
I don't even know if that's much of an argument.
Well, people are going to say, well, Florida's terrible. Coach Prime. No, Coach Prime has Shedeur Sanders, and he has Travis Hunter and great skill position talent. He does not have great lines of scrimmage talent. Neither does Florida, but I think Florida's better on the O-line and the D-line.
Colorado has one of the worst offensive lines in the Power Four.
Agreed. Yeah.
And
they ran the ball pretty good last week against UCF.
I was talking to our friend and colleague Hayes Carline about this yesterday, and when he came in the building, we were just talking a bit about kind of the game and how we think this might turn out. What was the narrative before the Colorado game got played for the UCF game? It was, man, UCF's going to run for 300 yards on this Gator defense, right? It was they were going to run it down our throat because they had been running.
Well, they led the nation in rushing.
Correct.
3 games in.
Correct. And that has been easily Florida's weakest point of their team is stopping the run. There's still a world where that can happen, 100%. To me, the nightmare scenario for the Gators is it's like the second quarter, 5-10 minutes into the second quarter, UCF's had a couple drives, they've maybe had a couple touchdowns, and KJ Jefferson and all, 250 of them has been getting downhill. He's run over Shamar James a couple times, he's run over Pup Howard a couple times, picked up a couple key first downs, and that defense is wearing down. That's a nightmare scenario. If that happens, then there's a world where that game gets ugly and it turns into one of those gross Texas A&M debacles again. I don't believe that to be what is going to happen. I think that the offense showed me enough to where I believe that they're going to stay on the field long enough, sustain long enough drives, and score enough points to at least keep the defense mentally invested. Now are they going to do anything with that? I don't know. I brought this up on Denmark and Marsh. Like, it's kind of a miracle how good these quarterbacks look, given everything that's going around the program right now. And the offense has honestly been a decent surprise the last couple of weeks. I don't know what this defense does Monday through Friday. I got no idea.
Well, they're terrible. Yeah, the defense.
I'm out of answers, dude.
2 thoughts on the UCF game. First, today's Gator Bytes podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can always log on to their website at se-ortho.com, and you can listen for Southeast Orthopedic Specialists, the good doctor, Kevin Murphy, on Thursday mornings in the 7 o'clock hour with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in the world of sports. 2 things. Number 1, if you want to know where Gator football is right now, and we all know where it is, but so it's kind of a rhetorical comment, there's a legitimate question as to whether they can beat UCF.
Yeah.
All right? Because keep in mind, the last 2 times these teams played, whether Florida wanted to be there or not, that's the excuse, UCF wiped the floor with the Gators in that bowl game a couple of years ago.
Yep.
That is where Florida football is. You can be the most diehard, passionate, live and die, bleed orange and blue person watching or listening to us right now, But there is no escaping the fact that there is a legitimate question 24 hours plus out from the UCF game as to whether Florida can win that game in the swamp in Gainesville. That is where Florida is right now. Having said that, the one thing about Billy Napier coming into 2024, like him, hate him, indifferent about him, what have you, is that Florida did play well at home before 2024. They were a good home team. Tennessee last year, Utah 2 years ago. And this year at home, they've been horrible. They got destroyed by Miami. They got destroyed by Texas A&M. I don't count Samford. That's ridiculous. Whatever. They've been awful at home. The law of averages will tell you, Graham, that at some point, they're going to put one together at home because they've had two complete whiffs against Power 4 opponents at home. So that's why, to me, I think even though there's a legitimate question about beating UCF, I think they're due to play well at home. They've proven they can play well at home under Napier in the past. They have not proven it this year. I think that changes tomorrow night.
And UCF is the worst team out of the three that we're talking about.
Yes. By the way, look, they got blown out by Miami and A&M. There's no solace in this. Just pointing it out. Those two teams are a combined 9-1.
Yeah.
Miami's 5-0 and A&M's 4-1.
Yeah, there was this. I think there was kind of this thought when A&M came in that this was not a very good football team because at the time the conversation was, well, Notre Dame beat A&M in College Station, and Notre Dame was fresh off a loss to Northern Illinois. So a little bit of transitive property there was like, man, I don't think A&M's very good, and they just came in here and kicked the hell out of the Gators. Miami, the narrative since that game has been that Miami's really good. Does that excuse how they played? Of course not. But I get what you're saying, and I think there's validity to what you're saying. UCF, because I'm taking Samford out. UCF's the worst team they've played at home so far, so does that mean they're going to play a little bit better? I sure hope so.
And again, I believe that's relative because I do think UCF's good.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they were ranked as recently as last week. Now they're not ranked.
The biggest difference, Hack, I think, between this game and the first two is I believe the offense is going to play far, far better against UCF than it did the first two games. The Miami game, I think Miami just might have a really, really good defense, and that defensive line was just obliterating the Gator offensive line.
Same thing with A&M.
Yeah, and A&M could not possibly have disagreed more with how Billy actually did the rotation. We debated back and forth before that game, like who should start and all that, and that's one conversation. I think we both agree that every other drive was insane.
What was crazy is when Mertz got into a rhythm, if it was Lagway's time to go in, he put Lagway in. I mean, you can't do that.
Just crazy.
I
crazy.
Agree. I agree. You can't be that neurotic, have it scripted like that. You got to go with the hot guy.
Yeah. So that was kind of weird and clunky in and of itself. And then the Miami game, I think Miami just has a really, really good defense that just quite frankly shut down an average offensive line at best, a below average offensive line, and an average probably offense. Florida's going to score points on UCF.
Yes.
That I know. They're going to score points.
By the way, UCF, even when they were winning games, TCU scored on UCF.
Correct.
Colorado scored a bunch on UCF. UCF is going to give up points. The question is, can Florida stop anybody? Because Mississippi State, who is awful, by the way, they might be the worst Power 4 team in America.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
awful.
It's bad.
And they ran the ball up and down the field on Florida. So there are legitimate concerns with the Gator defense. By the way, this is kind of an aside because it's probably not going to matter in a couple of weeks or certainly a couple of months. But if there wasn't so much heat on Billy, Austin Armstrong, Roberts, fellas, what are y'all doing? I mean, nobody cares because everybody's got the pressure on Billy Napier, but my gosh, man, that defensive staff, like you said, I don't know if they practiced during the week or what.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
What do they do?
They're
What
bad.
do they do throughout the week? It is insane. Like, look, the offense has had its problems this year so far, particularly with the quarterback rotation and whatnot. But there have been times in basically every game where I've seen something I mean, what are we doing on the defensive side of the ball? It is the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen.
Well, I think it's one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen. Nothing might be as bad as Kentucky and LSU last year. And I mean that. I'm 40 years old. My first memory of Gator football, I'm one of those spoiled guys where I don't really remember much prior to Spurrier. I vaguely remember the AstroTurf and Donald Douglas in 1989 and Arden Krzyzewski and Kirk Kirkpatrick. But basically, you know who any of those guys are, by the way?
Yes.
You know Kirk Kirkpatrick and Krzyzewski and...
It's because I've heard the names before.
How about that? Good for you.
It's mostly because I work in this building.
Yeah. My lasting image of Gator football, though, really started in 90 with Spurrier because I was 6 years old. And since that time, I think I've ever seen worse Gator defense than in Lexington last year or in Baton Rouge last year.
Well, yeah, and that's when I was saying this is the most embarrassing, I'm extending it back
just
to
the
that.
entire.
Yeah.
Well, they added Roberts this year, which you thought might do something. It's done nothing.
I mean, Roberts, I don't know what he's done since he's been here. Austin Armstrong, I mean, why does he still have a job? I don't mean to be that guy, but I mean, he basically, so he's the DC last year. Billy Napier pretty much hired a babysitter for him this year, to put it lightly. And they're still awful.
Yeah.
I mean, what's going on? Since he has been in the building, they have been nothing but putrid and embarrassing on defense. And I don't understand this, Hack. We're going on 5 years of horrendous Florida Gator football defensive play. 5 years. This dates back to when Mullen was still the coach.
And college football is a game of scoring, but there's a limit to it, what you should be allowing. Florida has exceeded that limit.
It's unbelievable.
Time and time again.
And I think we talked about this a bit the other day. So I think, Hack, what I've concluded with this is on both sides of the ball, you need guys, right? You need talent everywhere to win at the highest level in college. We know that. But on offense, there's more that you can do scheme-wise. There's more that you can do squeezing every last ounce of talent out of somebody, getting somebody to overachieve, putting guys in position to succeed, play calling. There's different things you can do to kind of finagle if you don't have the best talent. Defense, if you ain't got the dudes, forget it. And Florida, not only do they not have the dudes in many spots, they don't have the starting dudes, they don't have the depth, and they blow coverages.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad across the board. But having said that, if we want to focus on the positive, again, Mississippi State's a hard team to gauge because of how bad they are, but that Gator offense was cooking, and it was a road game in the conference. Mertz was good. Lagway was good. They're going to keep the 2-quarterback rotation for the rest of the year, including UCF. Here's the thing, too. The 3-game stretch coming up before the next bye. 2 byes this year. They just had one. They'll have another one before the cocktail party. So you're at home tomorrow against UCF. You go to Neyland. And then you're home against Kentucky. At this point, you're looking for anything plausible, right? Any signs of hope, any signs of things that could happen positively. I'm not saying this will happen because, hell, Kentucky just went into Oxford and won last week. But I'm saying theoretically it could. It does not take a giant leap to say that they could win their 2 home games in the next 3. They could beat UCF, and they could beat Kentucky. Will they? I don't know, but they could. I don't think they can beat Tennessee. I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to be sitting in this chair 7 days from now, and regardless of what happens against UCF, where they win 50-0 or they lose 50-0, barring the entire Tennessee team getting food poisoning in the next 7 days, I'm not picking Florida sitting in this chair 7 days from now. I don't think they can go into Neyland on a Saturday night and win that game. I do think they could beat UCF and Kentucky. And if they do that, and if they're 4-3 going into the bye, I think at that point, Napier's the coach for the remainder of the year. There is no more discussion about that. He'll get at least the next 5 games after the bye. I guess my question, Graham, is what if they split the home games? What if they beat UCF and they lose to Kentucky? Or
and they're
vice
1-2
versa?
and 3-4 heading into the bye.
3-4 heading into the bye. Do you keep Napier around and just see what he can do for the next 5? I think 4-3 is a lock. 2-5, if they lose the next 3, I think Napier's gone. And again, I don't
You
really
think Napier's gone right then and there?
I think if you're 2-5, I think he's gone the Sunday after Kentucky.
Yeah.
Because that gives you 13 days to
You
get
think he will
Dan
not be on
Enos
the
in.
sideline for the Georgia game?
Right. If
Yeah.
he's 2-5, I do not believe he'll be on the sideline for the Georgia game. I do believe at 4-3, though, he's probably earned the right to at least finish out the year. Thoughts?
I agree. I think that's about, I think, where they'll probably land. I think that's about fair.
So you think they win both home games?
No. I'm saying, like, those scenarios you played out and what the outcome would be from that of Napier keeping his job, I think those are both fair to say. 4-3, it's not, they've had some stinkers in there, but I don't know that you can fire a coach as a winning record going into the bye.
I mean, the bottom line is at 1-2, you would never have thought they would have gotten to 4-3.
Yeah,
and they have a very realistic chance of getting to 4-3. It takes 2 home wins. It doesn't take a lot. UCF at home, Kentucky at home. Both teams are unranked. If you beat 2 unranked teams in the swamp, you will at worst be 4-3 heading into the bye.
And by the way, really quickly, because I know this isn't Kentucky week and we're not doing a Kentucky, but just kind of because we've already brought up that game for a minute, most people listening to this are probably thinking, oh, there's no chance. You know, Kentucky had Georgia beat. Kentucky just beat Ole Miss and Oxford. Like, there's no shot. The one thing I'll say about Kentucky, because they did get the doors beat off them by South Carolina.
Craziest game of the year. Most unexplainable game of college football in 2024 was South Carolina going into Lexington and winning by 25.
So what I will say about Kentucky is the style of football they play and kind of the brand of football they play, don't they seem like a team that plays up and down to their level of competition?
Seem like a team that should be in the NFL. They run the ball. They play tough physical defense.
Right. But they're a little mush-champy, aren't they? Like, they play really good defense.
And play really well when
every game they play is rock fights.
Yep.
Right? And they'll play a top 2 or 3 team in the country. You'll look up, there's 5 minutes left in the fourth, and they might even be winning. Or it's a one-possession game, and you're not sure who's going to win. And then they'll lose to a team that's lost 4 straight. You know what I mean? Like, they're that type of opponent. So anyone who's thinking right now that, like, there's no shot the Gators win, I give pause there. Now, am I picking them to win? No, but there's a better fighting chance than I think people think.
I'll wait till the next 2 weeks. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not going to pick them to beat Kentucky. I'm not going to pick them to beat Tennessee.
Correct.
But I could absolutely see myself picking them to beat Kentucky.
So, to me, what's most likely going to happen, Hack, I think most likely in the next 3 they go 1-2. Most likely.
And at 3-4, then do you keep Napier around?
They'll keep him around, I think. But here's the thing: they keep him around, and then Georgia beats him by 1,000.
Yeah. See, the problem there, though, and again, not to get too far ahead because we're going to be doing these every Friday, that Georgia game is going to end 7:30, 8 o'clock Saturday night. You fly back to Gainesville Sunday morning. You're on a plane to Austin, Texas on Friday. You're going to fire Napier and 5 days later get on a plane with Dan Enos to be your interim coach. I'm assuming it's Dan Enos because he's the only guy that has any head coaching experience on the roster.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get to that when we get to it. Hopefully we don't get to it. Hopefully they beat UCF and they beat Kentucky. Again, if you're picking them to beat Tennessee, I want some of what you're drinking because it's probably really good stuff.
Something that I tweeted about this the other day after the Mississippi State game. Something that I think Gator fans need to just do, and some Gator fans are doing it, I think some aren't. I know we're all talking about the coach and if his head's going to roll or not every given week and what's going on there in the future of the program. I get all that, and we've got a lot of time to have those conversations.
The season's only a third over. You got 8 games left.
Correct. There's 2 things I'm imploring Gator fans to understand. A, I believe that they're going to end up firing Napier at some point this year or at the end of the year or what have you, and we're going to be looking in a different direction next year anyways. I am pretty confident in that. That said, I get upset about the games. I get emotional about the games too. But we still got to understand that it's early October. Firing him today doesn't allow us to fast forward to the end of the season and realistically look to hire people. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there's still games to be played. And the second part of that is, even though Florida's not very good, even if they beat UCF and UCF's not very good, whatever, like, when Florida wins ball games this year, they're probably not going to win a lot of them, so just enjoy them.
Right.
Don't take every game and think about, oh, well, that team sucks and this doesn't mean anything, and don't be that guy. If Florida wins a game, just take that Saturday and just enjoy that they won.
No, I agree. Now, let me throw this at you, because we got to get to the games and the picks here in a moment. All right, so let's say under our scenario, they beat UCF, lose to Tennessee, beat Kentucky. They're 4-3. Those last 5, Georgia and Texas, they're going to lose those games.
So they'll be
4 and 5 in our scenario. Florida State's awful.
Bad.
Awful.
The Gators are beating Florida State.
The game's in Doak Campbell.
The Gators are beating Florida State.
I think
Florida State.
I've said that too many times when Florida's gone to Tallahassee.
The Gators are beating Florida State.
But they could. They could absolutely beat Florida State. So that would get them to 5.
The Gators can complete a forward pass.
Yeah. If they somehow miraculously split Ole Miss LSU.
Okay.
They're 6-6 and going to a bowl game. Are you firing Napier? At 6-6 going to a bowl game with what did we all say at the beginning of the year? We would take 7-5 and head for the hills, right? I know I said that. I believe you said that. I don't think 7's going to happen, but 6 is certainly in play. 6-6 in a bowl game. I don't know if Napier's gone, and truthfully, I don't know if he would deserve to be gone at that point.
I don't either.
From 1-2 to 6-6, that means you go 5-3. No, 5-4. 5-4 in your last 9 with this schedule. I don't know.
I don't either, Hack, but I don't think it's going to happen.
You don't think they're going to get to 6?
No.
Okay, but again, UCF, Kentucky in theory, Florida State in theory, and then you find a way to split Ole Miss LSU. I'm just saying crazier things have happened.
Crazier things have happened. I don't see any world where they split Ole Miss and LSU. I think they get beat pretty good in both of those games.
Ole Miss, I'm going to start wondering about Ole Miss, and I'll tell you why. I think that loss last week took a lot out of them. That game against South Carolina tomorrow is going to be pretty interesting. Ole Miss has the same problem Florida State does. They have a ton of transfers. And those transfers didn't grow up to go into the Grove and watching Ole Miss football, and they're not, in it for Ole Miss. I think that's Florida State's biggest problem. Florida State at 1-4, nobody's playing for the university.
Yeah.
They're playing to get to the NFL, or they're playing for the next transfer portal destination. The season's over for the Noles.
You know who's
Ole Miss might be in the same boat if they lose another game.
Really a small sidebar, but still relevant to the conversation. You know who's an interesting kind of little, you just saying that made me think of him? Eugene Wilson. How many people on Twitter tried to spread this BS narrative that he was going to opt out for the season and the surgery and all that, and he wasn't going to play? This matters to what you just said. Eugene Wilson grew up a Gator fan.
Yeah, and that does matter.
It was his absolute. There's a quote from him from his visit. He put the Gator helmet on, and his dad, he had already taken all the pictures and stuff, and his dad was like, "You don't want to take the helmet off, do you?" And Eugene Wilson was like, "Hell no, I don't."
Right. I mean, Florida State's got 31-year transfers over there. They're 1-4.
Yeah.
They're not invested. What do they care?
Yeah.
They didn't grow up watching Chief Osceola run out there with the Marching Chiefs and Renegade. They signed a free agent contract to come to Florida State University for 2024. Now that the season's over. And again, this isn't just a Florida State topic. That's why I'm relating it to Ole Miss. There's a lot of schools in this boat. So I just wonder, that game against Ole Miss is late in the year. Let Ole Miss lose another game or two.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of see about the Ole Miss Rebels, which also, by the way, may play into some issues Lane Kiffin to Florida.
Yeah.
We'll see about that.
You're telling me Princely Uman Mielen is not
No.
a diehard. He doesn't bleed.
He doesn't bleed Ole Miss blue or whatever it is, red and blue. No, but and that's kind of where we are in college football now.
The reason that, and listen, there's a lot of football to be played between here and then. The reason I give Florida no chance against Ole Miss is because the teams Ole Miss struggles against are teams that can beat them up physically. And Florida's not a team that beats them up. That's why they lost to Kentucky. And this has been the case. Look, I want Lane Kiffin too. Trust me, everybody listening. That's been his Achilles heel as a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
The games he struggles are teams that can beat him up front and teams that can penetrate his offensive line, harass his QB, stop his running game, so it makes it tough for that offense, that quick tempo, explosive offense to get any type of rhythm and get defenses on their heels. And then on the flip side of the ball, teams that can just run it down their throat. And that's what Kentucky did, and that's why Kentucky won the game. Florida's not a team that's going to get in a rock fight with them and push them around.
No. And again, I'm just trying to, give the other side of it. Back to the original point. If Napier gets to 6-6, Gator fan, I talked to a lot of you in the preseason. I asked you 7-5. Would you take it? And overwhelming, you said yes. There that big a difference between 7-5 and 6-6? I don't know. I think it's 6-6. There's a conversation to give Napier year number 4.
Something I will say to that, Hack, is one thing that all of us did say, though,
is how it looks. Right. But again, there's 8 games left. I'll tell you this, they're 2-2. If they get to 6, that means they're winning 4 more games in this schedule. It can't help but look good.
I agree.
I mean, that story's not been written. I mean, they go out there and they beat UCF by, 2 touchdowns tomorrow. What are we saying about Billy Napier on Sunday? I think this is going to change weekly. Now, Mississippi State didn't buy him any cred or whatever verbiage you want to use. I think beating UCF tomorrow would a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And look, that's kind of the beauty of this, is there's a lot of football to be played to answer these questions for us. You know what I mean?
It's the ultimate reality show, man.
And that kind of gets back to something I was saying a minute ago. Like, look, as aggravating and as infuriating as it is when the Gators lose and look really bad in these, like the A&M game and the Miami game, again, we're not even halfway through the season. Like, as much as I wish it could, if they have another complete stinker and people want Napier gone and they want him fired and move on, which I would probably be in the same boat, firing him this weekend doesn't allow you to fast forward to November. Like, it feels like it does. It feels like you're doing something, but you're really not. And I get the whole, like, maybe you put a spark in the locker room or whatever, but I don't really buy that with Napier because his guys are clearly playing for him.
Yeah, they're playing hard. Look, I don't think you're not going to fire him on Sunday after UCF. If you fire him during the year, the only time to do it, in my opinion, would be after these 3 games. If they go 0-3, and that's the only scenario I see. If they lose to UCF, Tennessee, and Kentucky, you're 2-5. You have 2 weeks before Georgia.
Yeah.
Maybe you do something then. If they don't do it then, he's going to get the rest of the year.
I
and
agree.
If he wins 1 or 2 of these games in the next 3,
then
I think he
the
deserves
conversation
the rest
starts
of the year.
to shift a bit.
Southeast Orthopedic Specialists, they bring you Gator Bytes every week here on 1010XL.com and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page, Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. All right, let's go quick. We got a lot of games. Let's get a Cliff Notes version. Does Florida State have a prayer tomorrow against Clemson?
No.
I wouldn't think so.
Lose. Florida State loses that game by 17.
Kudos to Dabo. That team was dead after Georgia on opening day.
Yeah,
people thought they were dead. And they've come back, and all they've done is wipe the floor with Stanford and NC State and App State. I mean, I think Georgia Tech, they beat in there as well. So Clemson, one of the hottest teams in the country. I agree, Clemson wins.
Look, man, he's goofy. He's got a weird transfer portal thing. Dabo Swinney's a good football
He's a very
coach,
good coach. And for Florida State, they're like us right now. They're like Gator fans, or I guess like you, because of course we're objective broadcast journalists. Florida State fans are like Florida fans. They're looking for hope.
Yeah.
They're looking for something to believe in, and they might get that tomorrow with Brock Glenn, the quarterback. So we'll see.
I don't think Brock Glenn's very good.
It's a tough situation to be thrown into. Saturday night, national TV against Clemson.
Is there a reason? What am I missing with Luke Krummenhoek? Is there something? Why don't they want to put him in?
I don't know. Because, they saw Glenn last year, and I don't know. That's weird. We'll see.
With Florida, at least it's the young guy that you would look toward the future if they make a switch. And Nurse is playing well, but that's weird. It's weird to me that they don't want to put Krummenhoek. I don't know.
You speak of weird. What's weird is a college football team having to fly 3,100 miles, which is what Miami's having to do to play Cal in Berkeley tomorrow. Game day is going to be there for some inexplicable reason. What's the least attended college game day of all time? Miami and Cal tomorrow, 13 hours before kickoff is when that show is going to start. That's going to be pretty interesting to watch at 6 a.m. local time. Does Miami have any problems going 3,000 miles to play Cal?
Well, it's earlier than 6 a.m. local time for Cal, right?
No, it's 9 a.m. Eastern,
no, you're right. You're right.
6
Sorry.
a.m.
You're right. Dude, that's weird. I'll tell you exactly why they're doing it. Because they want to push the conference, like the conference realignment. They want to highlight that and make it seem like it's the greatest thing of all time.
I mean, you're a young kid.
And Game Day is going to spend 4 hours telling us why it's awesome that Cal is in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Agreed.
That's what they're going to do.
Rewind the clock back, what are you, 25, 26?
26.
Rewind the clock back 5 years. You had to play 10:30 Eastern time. Your body clock's going to be all weird, right?
100%.
That's a tough deal for Miami.
I mean, we've seen this how many times have we seen the Gators go to Vanderbilt and play the 11 o'clock? That's 1 hour, and it really screws them up a lot.
So having said that, I think Miami wins, but I think it's close.
Yeah. So it's funny, I've seen them play at multiple ACC games now, and I still think that Cal is just on this ACC tour of just playing these random teams. They're not actually in the conference.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's still weird for me to convince myself no, these are conference games.
Well, that's like Stanford was at Clemson last week. That was bizarre.
It's just so bizarre.
USC at Michigan. I'm like, oh, that's a good game. I'm thinking that's a Big Ten game now.
And we've still been early enough in the season to where a lot of non-conference games like that would normally be getting played anyways. So my brain keeps telling me that this is just like a before conference play starts Pac-12 ACC thing. And I'm like, no, this is conference play.
Yeah.
So having seen Cal in a couple of games now, they'll score points. We know they can score.
Their defense is decent.
So,
they should have beat Florida State.
They should have beat 100%. They should have beat Florida State.
They did beat Auburn.
I think Miami will control the lines of scrimmage enough to where probably midway through the third, fourth quarter, they'll probably be running away with it, if I had to guess. I'll tell you one thing about Cam Ward. He's really good. He's liable for 4 to 5 really stupid plays a game.
Mm-hmm.
So if the game is close enough to where those plays are consequential, that could bite them at some point.
Let's go rapid fire. Georgia, Auburn. Georgia has no problem, right? Both teams coming off devastating losses.
Peyton Thorne's going to throw 75 interceptions. That guy can't stop turning the ball over.
Yeah.
He's not a bad quarterback, but sorry, go ahead.
Does Alabama have any issues maybe in the first half with Vanderbilt? It's an improved Vandy team.
No.
Vandy should have beat Missouri. The only reason I bring that up, you go from 100,000 Saturday night, one of the games of the year, to now you're traveling to Nashville to a 30,000 or whatever seat stadium it is. I could see that game being 17-7 at halftime. I think Alabama pulls away. But say what you will about Vandy, they did go into Missouri, who's one of the best teams in the country, and should have beat Missouri. I think Vandy's better. Alabama will win the game. I'm just very curious how 7 days after that ridiculous game against Georgia, now they have to play a Vanderbilt team in Nashville.
Things might be different as the DeBoer era continues to get going and we get a bigger sample size and see how this works. My brain just always views Alabama as the hope crusher. The up and coming SEC teams, Alabama, when they always just beats the living hell out of them.
Yeah.
Remember the classic, the last time Vandy was any good? I think it was 2016.
It was 59-0.
Alabama, you're next.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
And Jalen Hurts in the locker was like, I mean, we are next.
And I don't dispute anything you're saying. I'm just saying where it falls on the schedule. But I agree, Alabama will win the game.
It's worthy of watching the first quarter.
Tennessee, Arkansas, that's a weird 7:30 game on ABC. Arkansas should be 5-0. Sam Pittman, I mean, how they've lost those two games to Oklahoma State and A&M's got to be just so frustrating.
That game's in Fayetteville?
It is.
Could be.
And there's a clear look-ahead factor for Tennessee having the Gators come in next week.
That's a check. Yeah, the powerhouse Gators.
Yeah.
That's a check-in type of game for me. I'm going to be another game's going to take my TV, but midway through the third, I'll see what's up.
Yeah, Tennessee at Arkansas tomorrow night. Probably the game of the week in the conference is the first game that kicks off. Noon tomorrow, ABC, number 9 Missouri at number 25 Texas A&M. It's a nice game.
That is a good game.
Undefeated Missouri, 1-loss A&M in College Station. Quite a chance for both teams.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. Marcel Reed is still starting for them, right? Okay. He's a good player, man.
Yeah.
He's good. I still believe they prove me wrong every week. They keep winning. I still believe Missouri is disgustingly overrated.
They do keep winning.
They keep winning. I get it. And eventually I have to give that up if they just keep winning on the field. I understand.
They did win the Cotton Bowl last year, and now they're undefeated this year.
I know. It's so hard for me. It's like the year they went to the SEC championship game. It's just my brain can't convince myself that Missouri is actually legit like that.
Hey, if you're a Gator fan, if Lane Kiffin says no, Eli Drinkowitz to me is your backup. So just keep that in mind when you watch Missouri. Maybe do a little scouting on Eli Drinkowitz tomorrow.
I'm not a fan of him. But
you would be if he was the coach of your team.
Of course.
He's one of those guys you don't like him if he's not the coach of your team. If he is the coach, you love him.
Heck, the Gators could hire you, and I'll drink the Kool-Aid and figure it out.
No, but I do think Eli Drinkowitz is because he did the whole Darth Vader thing with Mullen.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys who likes to ruffle feathers a little bit. I personally like him. keep Drinkowitz in the back of your mind if Lane Kiffin.
Those have been the most successful Gator coaches historically. Is
Yes.
the cocky SOBs.
And that does bring us. Oh, one more. This is actually a pretty good one too. Ole Miss at South Carolina. You talk about Ole Miss struggling with physical teams.
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina is a physical team. It's in Columbia. Does Ole Miss lose again?
Ole Miss wins, but they don't run away with it. They win because they're a bit desperate, and they have to win that game. But it's going to be midway through the third, end of the third. You're going to be like, okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be a 3-7 point game, something like that at that point.
I like it. There's a bunch of good games tomorrow. And then that brings us to tomorrow night in the Swamp, UCF, Florida. I've basically made no bones about it on this podcast. I think Florida's going to win the game. I think the law of averages, man. Napier, for whatever he hasn't done as the Gator coach, he's always been good at home up until 2024. And they've had two clunkers. Awful against Miami, awful against A&M. I don't believe they're going to be awful for a third home game in a row. I think the luster on UCF, to me, is completely gone after what Colorado did to them last week. Actually, I kind of wonder where UCF will be mentally after what Colorado did to them last week. Coming into the Swamp on a Saturday night, I still think means something. And for that, I'm going to pick Florida to win the game. And I actually think they win the game by about 10 points.
Do you want to know how you neutralize a hostile crowd hack?
You run the ball.
You run the ball, and you get some stops. UCF could run the ball. They ain't getting stops. I believe that entire game, Florida is going to continue to score and score and score and score some more. And UCF's probably going to do the same thing. But Florida having the crowd, I think Florida scoring. I agree with you. The Gators win. I picked the Gators to win on Denmark and Marsh the other day as well. But I picked them to win 49-46.
I would love a game like that.
They're going to score a lot of points, bro.
Now, quickly, as a proud Gator alum, the Billy Napier meter. Over here's fired. Over here's safe. He's probably more over here. If he beats UCF, does it come back to the left at all?
So you're saying like 10 is, I don't care. They needed
10
to fire
is on
him.
my rate. I want him gone. 0, he's the best coach on planet Earth. He's probably at a 7 or 8 right now.
He's at an 8 today.
What if he beats UCF?
He's at a 7.
So he will come back a little bit.
Yeah. Look, man. I've said after both losses they need to move on. But like, I'm not one of those guys that's like I stand by that, blah, 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 because the games get played for a reason. Football gets played for a reason. I believe in the offseason, you have your takes, you stick to them, whatever. During the season, we watch football for a reason. None of us know what's going to happen the next 4 weeks or whatever. You watch football, you adjust your point. What I've seen so far, Billy Napier deserves to be fired, and if he was fired today, I would think it's justified. That doesn't change the fact that he's got football in front of him to change that.
And
It's that simple.
That starts tomorrow night. You'll hear Florida and UCF on 1010XL and 92.5 FM. We will be back next week to review UCF and preview the loss that Florida's going to take next week up in Knoxville. Thank you again, ESPN, SEC. 7 o'clock at Neyland Stadium on ESPN. Are you kidding me? That's for next week.
Well, they had to come here 7 o'clock last year in Gainesville, to be fair.
He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green. Thank you for watching and listening to Gator Bytes, presented by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists, 1010XL.com, and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page.